How everybody? Okay, I think we're good now. Let me check. Let me check here. Good evening. Good evening. How is everyone doing this fine evening? I believe we're live now on this Thursday, Wednesday night. I'm so used to saying Thursdays. Um, I'm so used to that. But I'm so excited to be here tonight with my special guest, Dr. la-Renda Jones of Beyond the Grief Ministries. And again, remember, like and share if you're watching this on Facebook now, if you're watching it on YouTube later, on the YouTube channel, like and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to grow the channel actively now. I didn't always do it, but now we are, and I'm just again so excited to be on BBS Radio. And before we get started, let's go ahead and do our intro. 1 second, we'll be in, and we'll be right back. Well, maybe. Good evening again. Welcome to the JustTroia show. I am your host, JustTroia. Y'all know, well, you know who I am. I'm JustTroia. But to my, what's that? My left, my right? I can't tell. My special guest is Dr. la-Renda Jones, Beyond the Grief Ministries. She was on before, and I'm so excited to be on BBS Radio. If you want to call in and talk to her, ask her any questions. The number's right there, 888-627-6008 or 323-744-7831. Excuse me, the phone number is scrolling at the bottom, so feel free to, if you have any questions of us, give us a call. We are live. And the producers in the background will alert us that if anybody who has any questions. So, Dr. Jones, please tell everybody who you are, how we met. We met. Well, I can guess I can tell that story. We were on a panel. What was it, almost a few months ago, right? Scattering hope, which is a grief summit for those who had committed suicide, and she was one of the guests. I didn't know her; she didn't know me, but we connected. I reached out to her. I said, "Hey, I got this show. Would you like to come on?" And she said yes. And from there, it's been a God connection. So I'm really excited that she is back on the show. And what I'm trying to do is recycle everybody who was on my first shows, that now that I'm on this new platform, that they have the opportunity to tell their story and get everything out there. So without further ado, Dr. Jones, can you tell everybody who you are, where you hailed from, and a little bit about Beyond the Grief?
Okay, first of all, Troia, it's beneath.
I'm sorry, beneath. I'm sorry, beneath.
That's perfectly fine. Good evening, everyone, and my name is Dr. la-Renda Jones, and I am from Beneath the Grief Ministries Counseling Services. And also, as well as counseling services, Beneath the Grief Ministries is in ministry. What Beneath the Grief Ministries is, of course, is you hear the word beneath the grief. And when you hear the word of beneath the grief, that is what it is, the grief. And in talking about this grief issue, let me say this to you, that I am not only talking about the grief of the graveyard grief. I'm talking about the grief of grief. Grief is grief. Just like we have here, good grief. Grief in problems, different areas of life is grief.
Mhm.
And it's grief because it bothers you and it annoys you and it will have an effect in your life. I will say that people don't want to see that. They ignore that. And I will say that there is a word that is used for that people get away from, and that is the word of grief. And instead, what people do is they use the word of bereavement. I hear this word quite often. I'm okay with the word, but I like to tell the truth. And the truth of the matter is that it is grief, and it's grief that some people do not even know what the word bereavement means. It
Mhm.
sounds like a type of a tag. And you'll say it, and people just be, well, I'm just in bereavement. Well, what is it? Tell me what it is. And I've asked many people and challenged them to give me the word, and I end up saying, you're grieving, aren't you? And they say yes. And then I'll ask them, well, let me ask you another question. Is it grief? And they're like, yes, I'm in grief. And I'm saying, well, tell me a little bit about your grief. And then they're telling me all kind of problems that they're having depression, that they are
Mhm.
anxious, and you might hear some mental health issues as well.
Right.
So when I say grief to people, I just immediately people shy away. I get it all the time that people say to me, "Well, I can't do this. That I'm getting scared. I'm getting nervous because I go after the grief." I need people to talk about the grief. It's ignored. And here we are in a pandemic. Let's tell the truth. I might sound like I'm preaching because I am. And so, with this grief, here we are in a pandemic and COVID-19, and we are in grief. Come on, tell me something that
Right.
we are grieving right now. And whoever says that they're not, I'm going to come at you. I'm going to come to you, and I'm going to ask you to explain to me how you're not in grief. Because what we have seen within the last over the year now, that we have seen many, many, many things happen. We have seen many, 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 many deaths. Okay, like I said, it is not just that. People have lost homes. People have lost other things. People have lost friendships. People have just lost ability. People have lost responsibility. Things have happened in people's lives that are grief. Okay, that's what it is. So when I talk about grief, I'm talking about it from every angle. So don't be scared. Don't be scared to talk about. Yes, we can. If you want to go there, I can go there too with the graveyard grief. I'll take you there. I'll help you there if that's what you need. I'll help you. But I want it to be known so that people can get comfortable with talking about this grief, because it
Mhm.
you need to do it, because if you don't, then I'll tell you, I always say that if you don't do it, it's coming to get you. Okay, so do it. Do your work in grieving. And if you do it, you can be free. You can be free. Yes, some people say, oh, how can I be free in grief? Well, you're not free if you don't do anything about it.
Right.
If you do nothing, if you just sit there and you do nothing about it, you ignore it, and for years and years I see people in grief about things that just take an expression. It just takes to do something about it, and they
Mhm.
do nothing,
Right.
because right away in their minds it's, and then they'll say, well, I can't deal with the grief part, because they're still stuck in that graveyard grief, still stuck
Right.
there. Anything that you've lost, anything that you have lost, that's important to us. Am I right? I mean, it's important. So why can we not go ahead and grieve? So lately, I've been hearing the word a little more. I'm getting a little more happier now. And everybody says, oh, this woman of grief. This woman get happy about this word grief. I want people to deal with their grief. That's what I want
And that's
people
the
to
thing.
do.
And that's what,
Yeah.
because I like I was telling somebody. was it Monday? I think it was. I was talking. I was on someone else's show, which was really great. Another BBS show. But the one thing she asked, we talked about was and it's good you're saying that about the grieving part. Is I was telling her that I found a definition that throughout the early in the pandemic, I was in a grief, it was an hour seminar, whatever they called it. And one of the definitions I've been using ever since has been from that. And I can't remember. I don't even remember how I even found these people. Excuse me. But they said that grief is the loss of a person, place, or thing that you're emotionally attached to. And then when I began the Good Grief program, it was, are you just going to talk about, like you said, the the physical loss of someone? And then somebody said, well, what about divorce? What about losing a job? What about lost opportunities? So grief does not just, like you said, it's not this, just the same way you grieve is not linear. How we define grief is not, it's not, it doesn't fit into this neat little box, like you said. But the one thing that you said, I mean, now, and it's starting to get a name, and you were right when you said that they're starting to, this thing, what's going on in the world, this thing of all this great loss, there is a term for it. There really truly is. I don't feel like I'm depressed, but I know something's not right. I lost my friend, I lost my job, I lost freedom, I lost these different things. What is this thing called? I know I'm not depressed, but it's something. And you're right, it's called grief. And I believe now we've been talking. It's been, and maybe that's God's divine plan, because the one thing that I'm on the mission to do is to normalize this thing called grief, and maybe the whole world needed to see that there's this loss and this grieving, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, we need to say the word.
Hmm.
We need to say the word that it is just that. Why are we putting band-aids on it?
Right.
uh, I think we mentioned earlier, Troya, that our community, we're horrible at doing this. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm just going to tell the truth. Whoever's angry with me, I'll be more than happy to talk to you. But we're horrible at this, and oftentimes, I am in private practice as well, and believe me, it's not one of those that the doors are swinging open and I'm fine with
Hmm.
that. But when you come, I need you to deal with your grief. I need you to do your homework. And guess what I find out? It's like you said, it could be a divorce. Again, here we are in the pandemic and people are losing jobs left and right. People don't
Hmm.
know what to do. They don't know the next steps. They have not seen their families. The different things, the children going back to school, spirituality in the church, what's going on, things
Hmm.
that are everyone, this is grief. This is grief. Let's do our work, and that's my drive wedge there, that I'm going after people, and I'm like saying, you'll deal with your grief. I think that's my mission here on earth. That's what I'm supposed to do. So I need people to do that and talk about that. That's a problem right there. If you keep your mouth closed on it, nothing's gonna happen. It's gonna feel
Hmm.
like a ghost. It's gonna feel
Right.
like that. It's going to feel like that. You're going to be affected by it. It can affect your body, your soul, your spirit, your
Everything.
mental. Everything about you is affected when you don't handle grief. As I have a book that's called Handle Your Grief, There is Hope, Nothing is Impossible. And it is big letters on the book, handle your grief.
Right.
It's not a sin and it's not a crime to handle your grief. And it needs to be done. So I can't push enough to say, please handle your grief. Let's face it,
Because it'll
everyone
show
grieves.
up.
Yes,
And you're right.
yes.
Everybody, and we talked about that too. That everybody. I mean, and well, Dave Kessler. I love him. Love Dave Kessler. I'm currently in a training with him, and now I was sharing the other day two things that just he just made me angry. When he said this one, he said that, and I saw this on Facebook. Somebody put a post in, and they mentioned something about, if you don't know, why I'm still crying a year later, that you've never experienced anything. And I said to them, spoiler alert, um, grief never goes away. When Dave Kessler said that in one of the trainings, I was just so angry. I was just like, wait, what? And I think all of us kind of, I mean, it was like a pause hitting your chest, like, like, what do you mean it's never going to go away? But the truth of the matter is, it doesn't, because there's always going to be something that may remind you. I was a complete wreck on Sunday. I had to sing. I was asked to be the praise and worship leader at a church this past Sunday. And when I said yes, I didn't pay attention to the date. It was my grandmother's birthday this past Sunday that I had to sing. But I had already committed to it. And as I was singing, I was into the worship, and I just got very emotional. And again, I didn't realize it till I sat down after I finished singing, and I looked and I was went to share the link of the church, and I looked at the date, and I was like, oh, it's my grandmother's birthday. And I said, clearly she wanted to hear me sing from heaven. But even that, then Dave Kessler's words came right back to me. It was like, the grief never goes away. I'm just learning how to live through the loss. And then the other thing he said, I think you agree, touch on that, is that something that he said, grief is as unique as your DNA, meaning that no two persons' DNA are the same unless you're a twin, an identical twin. So no way, the way that you grieve is not going to be the same. I'm not going to grieve like you do, Dr. Jones, and you're not going to grieve like I do, and I'm not going to grieve like other people. And however I grieve is it works. Whatever works for me, right? And we can't force people into this little box, and we can't. And we want them to go through the 5 stages that Kubler-Ross made so many years ago, and that's not the neat little package anymore, right?
Exactly. Those stages don't go in order.
Mm-mm.
And we need to see that the stages are not 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The stages might be 4, 5, 6, and 7. So
Right.
we need to come out of, I like how you said that. We need to come out of that box. And that box for everyone is different. And
Mm-hmm.
that first uh thing that we need to do as someone who say if you're dealing with somebody that is in any kind of grief, first of all, listen. Please listen.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you listen, part of communication, right? If you listen, you'll find out about the grief. You'll find out if we listen
Mm-hmm.
and look. Uh, yeah, look at body language. I mean, these things that I'm talking about, these are issues that people have, and it's in their grief, their
Yeah.
body language, what they say, how they say it.
Mm-hmm.
These are areas that in people's lives, and you'd be surprised, a crack of a voice, a crack of someone's voice, they're grieving.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do the work and all, you'll know it. You'll know it. And if you listen to what they say, then you'll hear it. I had an elderly lady. Actually, it was kind of strange because I knew her from a church. And a couple of weeks ago, apparently her daughter is part of a program that and a school that I'm in. And I was talking to the mother. I was talking to the daughter, and the daughter says, "Well, I want you to, talk to the mother." And so the mother called me, and I mean, now can I tell you, all over the church, from what I know of the sister, beautiful lady, beautiful elderly lady. I love it. I love to see the woman praise the Lord. I just love to see it. And I mean. But when she got on that phone, and she was talking to me, I could not believe how this woman, she said, she said, I need to talk to you about some of that stuff. That's what she said. I need to talk to you about some of that stuff. I knew what some of the stuff was she was talking about, that she did not have to say to me, I want to talk to you about the grief. But
Mm-hmm.
because I was listening, because I had that listening ear, she began to tell me about her husband that did pass away about 5 or 6 years ago.
Wow.
She began to talk about that and how she never talked about the fact of, he had the kind of job he had, how he never rested, how he just was just working all the time. She didn't know what to do. I mean, I was really, really amazed how this woman began to talk about her grief. And I was just, I was just so proud of her. I was like, wow. And now I'm thinking I could see this woman dancing around the church. And I'm saying, like, I knew who she was, and I was just shocked. And I was like, I said, you know something? Let me just ask you. Now that you've said all of that and you told me a little bit about your husband, I said, how do you feel now that you have talked about this? The woman said, I actually feel better. She said, actually, better.
And that's the key. Because somebody asked me that last week, when we were at the retreat. They're like, how they said, how did you know how to do this? I said what I've done. The only thing I've done two things. I've created a safe space, a no judgment zone, that you can say whatever you want, and then gave you the permission to say how you're feeling. And I don't think we do that enough in any community. I don't think we do it we actually, we don't do it in the African American community, but I don't think we do it enough in America, period. That create a safe, non-judgmental zone and say, listen, sugar, we know that the underlying reason why you're doing drugs, why you're self-medicating, why you're making bad decisions, there's a loss, there's a trauma there that's unresolved, and you're stuck in that trauma. And somebody said, well, Troy, I said, God called me. I didn't call me to this work. God called me to this work. And my hope and my desire is that I pull people out of the muck and the miry clay before it gets too hard, before it gets hardened into the grief. And I believe that you're the same way. And like I was sharing with the NAACP a couple weeks ago, was very disheartening though, is those of us who are starting to work in this grief work, not a lot of us look like us. Because I don't know if we feel as though we don't grieve, or we've had this keep moving. We need to keep moving, and we just need to keep moving no matter what we're feeling. Just keep on trucking, baby. And we know that's not it. And we know that at some point, boom, we're gonna hit a wall. And we don't know what that wall is. And it's like, hello, deal with me. Hello, deal with me. I'm crying today, deal with me. Okay, you don't want to deal with me? Boom. And then the floodgates open, right? So what
All
do
the
we how
time.
do we how do we continue to create spaces where people, and oh, I'm sorry, if you're watching on Facebook Live or YouTube, one, like and share, but also feel free to call in 888-627-6008 or 323-744-7831, and they will let us know that you have a question for Dr. Jones or myself. And again, I am JustTroia, and we're talking about grief. And which is, again, the definition we gave was, grief is the loss of a person, place, or thing that you're emotionally attached to. So, Dr. Jones, how do we get to normal? I mean, again, that's, I told them a couple of weeks ago, my job, my mission, my goal is to, one, get as many people to healing, whatever that healing looks like for them, and to normalize this thing that we're collectively going through in this through this pandemic, which is grief.
Okay, I'm going to hit some other areas. Fear.
Yeah.
I'm going to attack it because it's there. The fear is there to handle any kind of grief. It's sitting right in front of the mirror. Another thing that's being sitting there is procrastination. I say this in
Mm.
my book, and I say a lot of other things in my book, but I picked these two areas out because it's sitting there, and it's what one don't do. The fear of the success, the fear of the unknown, the fear, just plain fear. Fear is going to bring that grief on even more.
Hmm.
If you don't deal with that grief, learn how to handle that grief, what's going to happen? The fear is going to turn into a real bigger fear.
Well, what you
Prepare.
said, speaking of fear, and I want you, so I want you to expound on that because as you were sitting there thinking, I was like, okay, when someone says you're fearful, like I'm not fearful, but you've contained your feelings for so long, right? And I'm afraid if I deal with this, that I'm never going to stop crying again. I'm gonna be in a ball. So how do you help somebody who is fearful in this particular case, not just of all the other stuff, but really releasing the pent up, built up, hidden the hidden feelings that are now in the heart, um, and fear that once the floodgates open, they won't shut.
Let me first say, in reference to emotions, please, please have your day with your emotions, please. Okay? Um, Stop trying to be the uh what's the word I'm looking for? Stop
Martyr.
trying to be thank you. That's probably best, yes. Stop trying to be the martyr. Go ahead and do it, please. I mean, it's okay to have your emotions. It Look, I have said to people, you can sit there and cry with me for an hour. If you choose to cry for a whole hour, I am not mad at you. Okay? No one is angry with you. Some people are very, very emotional to that level. It's
Hmm.
okay. But people are afraid to drop that ball. It's all right. I use my famous tissue boxes. Get your beautiful cube tissue box if this is a loved one, and I don't even care if it's a problem. Get that beautiful tissue box. And it's a certain amount of tissues in those boxes. I think like 80 tissues in the box or something. Yeah, I've counted.
Yeah, I was trying to see. I had one, but I don't know what I did with it. I thought one was right in front of me.
So I mean, take the tissue box, take the tissue, and each tissue is a grief.
Mm,
Take it. Take each one of them and handle that. Let's that one tissue that you have, that one tear, because I'm going to ask you, if you're dealing with me, I'm going to ask you, what is that? What is that one specific area? And you'd be surprised, it turns out to be about 20 areas or so. That's okay, because what you're doing is you're bringing out that issue so that you can begin to deal with the fear. That's when you're going to start attacking the fear, because you're starting to express that in that way that you can. If it's through your emotions, it's fine. I
right.
just say people, stop. You know, you hear me? I'm like begging, like, stop. Do your work. It's okay.
And and that's funny because a lot of people, like I said, when I was, I mean, it was, I mean, when you open up, it's like if I let go, if I let this go, it's going to be years and years and years. Because I know I tell people when I started writing, you mentioned your the books. When I started writing mine, I didn't know. I didn't know that I would go back to when I was 4 years old. And I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to talk about, excuse me, my grandma, my father's mother who passed away. And I didn't know that I still had emotions tied to her death. And I think I said it on Monday. Um, I say even when when we go back to that whole the grief never goes away. Um, I still have issues going to the hospital that she died in, and my grandmother has been gone since I'm 4, and clearly I'm not 4 anymore. But I can find and but I had to. That's a fear. Not that hospital's no longer there, but I was very fearful of going into that hospital. Even the hospital that my mother's mother passed away 2 years ago. My grandmother who passed away 2 years ago. The first time I went to that hospital was during the pandemic. After my grandmother died, my mom was in the hospital. Um, I didn't say it then. I just had a kid again because I didn't. It was unresolved, and I think that's what we do. We keep going in. Like I told the group the other week, we keep going into the fire without guarding our hearts and without fixing what's in our hearts, and not and this. So you have this unresolved, and then this compounded. Then we have this compounded grief and fear, and it's just, and then we get overwhelmed, and we lash out and do crazy stuff because we're fearful, like you said, fearful. We're we just don't know what to do, right?
Mhm. Yeah, people tend to they tend to leave it there. They
Mm-hmm.
tend to leave those feelings there. I get this all the time. People will come with another problem that is another problem. It's really, I'll hear somebody say, okay, let me give an example. They'll say I have a problem smoking. Okay. And then I found out they lost their mother. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, um, huh? You know, and then you'll find out much more in terms of them losing their mother than the smoking problem, because you find that the smoking problem, it's an issue, but there's the other problem with the mom passing away, and you never dealt with what was underneath that, and that went on, and there was so much built up in that alone that
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I wonder. I just, and people ask me, they be like, well, when I'm asking a question, and I'll say, well, they'll say the cigarette problem or something. And I'll say, well, did you lose your mother? And they'll look at me like, oh, where'd she get that from? Like, wow, like I did something. Like, I didn't do nothing but ask you a question,
Right.
and they're like, how did you do that? Like I did something, like something. I did nothing. I did nothing but ask the question. I mean, because I can tell that when people present the other problem, that they don't present the grief. They
No.
present something else to cover the grief.
Right.
And that's why beneath the grief, because they cover it and they do it a lot and they're good at it. People come in and they're good at it. And I'm like, no, no, what you've done is you've ignored a very, very critical part of your life, that you felt that moment, I don't need to deal with that. I don't need to deal with that. But you needed to deal with that, because if you don't deal with it now, you're going to deal with it. It's
Exactly.
going to affect you. And then some people, oh, please let me hit this one. Well, that's over. That's over. Done with. And then you hear the, or in time, in time, in time. Um, can you say something about time? This is the way
Isn't
we
it?
know.
When you said that, in the first when you said time, in time, the song that hit me, Layla Hathaway, and I know she did a remix of it, but it says, time, the words of the song, "Time heals all wounds, so they say."
Mm-hmm.
That might have been me. You back? So that part, that was, I think my internet did something stupid. But anyway, sorry about that, everybody. But yeah, and that's the thing. Time heals all wounds, so they say. I'll never get that. And it wasn't until right now when you just said that popped into my head. And time, yes, time does heal everything.
I think when she says,
Okay, I'm back. You got to put something on the wound, right? In order for it to heal. If you didn't put anything on it, right? So I mean, so when you said that, that's the first thing that hit my head. That song, the words of that song. Time doesn't necessarily heal everything.
it take the time to do the work.
Hmm.
I mean, because I hear people use that all the time. And it's like, take the time to do the work. I mean, because we're quick to say that. That's a cliche. That the time he you ever thought about that uh it could be meant for you to deal with that one specific issue at that time, since you want to use the time zone, that at that time it's time for you to deal with that
Right.
issue. We need to do it, and we use that crutch all the time. Oh, oh, it'll take time. I tell people, please don't tell people that have passed away and that you say, oh honey, time will take care of that. You please,
Time
please
doesn't.
don't.
If you don't deal with it, it doesn't matter the amount of time. It's not going to matter. It could be years, and then the smallest thing will set you off. It will a smell, a touch, a fragrance, because you didn't deal. That's why people, we were talking. I mean, like, why the when like the George Floyd thing, when that happened, why did it hit us so hard? Or and then I saw the young man who shot up the church down in Charleston. He was in the news today, and my mind went straight back to that. Is because we have all this other stuff underneath our grief and our loss, and we feel it so deeply because we, as a community, a black community, and then the Christian community, we keep moving, and we just keep putting things on top of one another until the top is like a soda. You shake it up, it has to go somewhere.
Yeah,
And when you
yeah.
open the lid, it's like
It's interesting that you mentioned the Christian community, because I find that we being believers, that we are to be like Jesus.
mhm.
Even Jesus grieved too. He did
Jesus
too.
what?
Yes, Jesus wept. Thank you. He did his part.
Right.
So what's wrong with us? And as the believers and in believers, we need to deal with this too. How are
Hmm.
we helping the communities? How are we helping as the body of Christ, the leaders? How are we helping those that are grieving? Can someone
Right.
help me out? I mean, it's there, and it's a job that we have to do, and we better do it.
Great.
We better do it. We better do it. If we don't, and I say this to to the leaders, as well as those who maybe somebody out there is grieving, and maybe somebody have not dealt with their grief, and so I can even hear somebody saying, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that." I can hear it. I hear it all the time. I encourage you to drop the pride. Drop it. Drop it. It's going to hurt you in the long run. It's okay. Find you the professional. Find you the coach. Do the work. Do the work so that it can be normalized.
Right.
Okay, so do the work. Stop acting like, oh, well, I ain't got no money for that. Ooh, you know how that goes. um Pay the bill. Okay, do what you need to do. Stop avoiding. That's another one in my book. My book, Grief to.
Yeah.
Sorry, so
What
you
is
see
it?
how
No, that's what I was going to say. Tell it because I before we because we're soon getting ready to get up out of here. But please tell everybody it's grief to growth, right?
I have 3 books. I have done 3 books, and each of them are in reference to grief. The Grief to Growth is a journal. Grief to Growth, and believe me, I've been like, somebody's been like, how in the world this woman is really with this grief deal. This is a journal to help you on your grievous moments. And what myself and my co-author have done, which is my best friend, that we have taken several words and special words we have in here, which somebody say, oh, that's them little bit of words. Well, these are special words that will help you to get through the grieving process. There's certain words. We got the fear in there. We got peace. We got procrastination. We got denial. We got avoidance. And these are words that we took, and they're mirrored so they can help you get through your grief. That's one of the books. The other one is the one I said, Handle Your Grief. There is hope. Nothing's impossible. This was my first book, actually, that really gets into you handling your grief. That's very serious. And then a cookbook was done. A cookbook was done to help grievers. Yeah. I chose 6 authors, co-authors, and all of them have given their recipes to help people eat better in terms of grieving. No matter what type of grief it is, but these authors, co-authors, have all put together recipes that are in this book to help people eat better. And so and then I have my part in there about accountability, nutrition, using fiber. So these are the books that I have that all pertain to dealing with grief. So
And
as
how
you
can
can
they
see,
find you?
it's about the grief deal.
So how can they find you?
How that you can find me? You can find me on Facebook under Beneath the Grief Ministries Counseling Services. On Instagram, you can go on Instagram at Beneath the Grief. Oh my goodness, child! Now you really getting me. My website is Beneath the Grief Ministries Counseling Services. My strikingly.com. You can find me on what is that?
Twitter,
Twi- Twitter.
Twitter.
Thank you, honey, because I'm telling you, I'm just everywhere. So it's like sometimes I
And
can't even
isn't it
get it.
isn't it happy? There's another one that you use.
Oh,
Happily.
yeah, okay, yeah. I'm on. You said Twitter. I'm on Twitter in 2 places. I'm on the Dr. Jones as well as Beneath the Grief. Then I'm on the network, which is new, called HAPS.
Haps.
H.
That's what it is.
Yeah, I'm on
That's what it is.
that HAPS. That's pretty new. I'm on there on Friday nights, and I talk about the issues of grief, as well as I do coaching as well as a subject that's very, 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 very much grievous, which is the narcissist. I talk about that group, the narcissist. So very, very serious, grievous issue in relationships. So you can find me on HAPS, where I'm there on Friday nights doing that. Also is Ministry Peace on the first and third weekends, where I'm on the conference line. We'll also have a chaplain as well, and we bring the Word of God. on the conference line, as well as it's on HAPS, on Blog Talk Radio as well. You can also find me on the Anchor.fm. You can find me in many different places: Castbox, Spotify, iTunes, Google, Stitcher, Breaker. All that's on my website that you can find me other places as well. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I'm in all those places.
Awesome. So if you want, as you can see, if you want to get in touch with Dr. Jones, absolutely do that. If you want to purchase her book, absolutely do that. Thank you, Dr. Jones, for being here. As always, I really, truly appreciate it. She has become a friend and I told her, I said, she's a life coach. She's a certified life coach. And she actually helped me get my life coaching, my life coaching certification. So I am I'm thankful for her. Thank BBS Radio. If you want to support the JustTroia program, feel free to. You can go to our website. I'm everywhere, JustTroia. What I do want to say is, one of the things that came out after I was our retreat a couple of weeks ago. One that I'll continue to say whenever I work with any of my clients, I have them do a head and a heart check, because we want to make sure that they're both in alignment. Because sometimes our heart is holding on to what our heads have already released. So we don't want to. So when you release it out of your head, you want to also release it out of your heart, so that you can then begin to live this life that God has intended to you to do. He doesn't intend for you to live a life of standing in the grief, which is why I write everybody knows I have the book Soul Ties, Letters of Love, learning to live through loss. I had to learn how to do this journey now, and I'm learning how to release, not just from my head, but also from my heart, because the Bible does tell us to guard your heart. But it also says the heart is a deceitful thing. So it's not there. I asked my telling them, I said, it's not that the Bible is contradicting each other. They're in concert. What it is saying is that guard what you're putting into your mind, your head gate, and so it doesn't flow to the heart. Because again, the issues of life flow through your heart. So what am I saying? Head and heart check always. Check your head, check your heart. If your heart is out of alignment, check your head. If your head is out of alignment, check your heart. And then hopefully, and then always check with God. So I am just so very appreciative. Again, Dr. Jones, thank you for coming. If you all need me, hello at JustTroia.com. I'm on BBS Radio every other Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. West Coast time. In 2 weeks, my guest will be Siobhan Stewart. And I'm so excited to talk with her. I think that's all I have for tonight. And I'm going to do our closeout, and then that'll be it. And we will see you in a couple of weeks. Again, thank you, Dr. Jones, and love you.
You too. Bye-bye.